Today I'm going to show you how I do frame by frame glitches using Audacity. There are ways to do the whole video, but this is specifically frame by frame. I'm using DaVinci Resolve, but you could realistically use any software you want. DaVinci Resolve is free, so I highly recommend it if you need something to get started. The only editing I'm going to do beforehand, I just increased the sharpness in the color tab here using the blur radius tool. You just put that to 0, and then I'm going to make that a compound clip. And then right click again, open in Fusion page. Then we're going to right click over here on this line, add tool, IO saver. And then over here we're going to go to browse. And I already have my folder set up, but just get a separate folder ready. And over here, make sure you type in .bmp, otherwise it's going to save it in a different file format. And then here, make sure you uncheck save alpha and uncheck process alpha. And in the playback, make sure it's at half. This doesn't necessarily matter, but this is going to save you a lot of storage. These pictures are going to be saved at 540p instead of 1080p. And then we're going to go to Fusion, render all savers. This is specifically a tip for DaVinci Resolve. I like to do 2 passes of the render all savers. Some of the time it drops a single frame and it gets frustrating when you try to re-import it back and the frame sequence is one off. Then this is another optional step I have. I forgot to mention this, but this is a Python script. So I'm going to clamp the values of the frames. In music production terms, this would be like giving the audio some headroom. Essentially what I'm doing is clamping the values to 2 and 253 instead of 0 and 255. Essentially this is just going to prevent it from being too noisy. Any all white pixel that's 255, 255, 255, if you run certain glitches over it, it just becomes noise and it's going to be hard to deal with later. There are certain situations where you'll get noise anyways, but that's something to deal with later. Okay, next we're going to import here into Audacity. File, import raw data. I already have the folder selected, but you might have to go navigate for it. Select the top left one, Control A. Encoding ULAW. You could change this, don't worry about it too much. Just keep it at mono. Don't worry about this, don't worry about this. Sample rate, you can change to anything. I'll just leave it default. I have an auto clicker going using my LG G502, but there are other programs to do that. I think auto hotkey is a popular one you could use, but I am not familiar with it. This takes about a minute or 2 depending on the speed of your hard drive. I would highly recommend a solid state drive. Otherwise you are going to be running into some long load times depending on how many frames and the resolution and what effects you're applying to it. There's a lot of different variables. It's kind of messy when you're using audio program to process images. You have to do your best to just work around the issues given. Okay, now it's imported. Here's a totally optional step, but I recommend it because it takes just about 5 seconds to do. Copy some random audio. You could even generate audio up here if you want. But basically what I'm doing is creating an extra track. Some effects work differently on the very first track compared to the rest of the tracks. I don't know why. Still don't know why, but it is what it is. That's just what I've learned to do. So now we have this whole frame sequence ready. I'm going to click the left button here, zoom in until we can see this. It's our file header. We're going to Control A, select this left part and bring it back. I mean, you can just do around 0.001, but just as long as it's past this spiky part, this is the file header where if you mess this up, it's going to be a little more effort to convert the pictures later. Next, we're going to apply an effect. So I'm going to add change tempo. You could get in all these. These are all free, but this is default with Audacity. And I'm going to change it to just be 1/100th of a second slower. Okay, now the effect is applied. I'm just going to go ahead and get rid of this top track. It's really unnecessary now. It's just the buffer track. You can either use the hotkey Control-Shift-L or just go to the export multiple. Okay, then make sure you select, and then we're going to go ahead and choose our folder. Select that. And I tend to do multiple glitches at once, so I make the RAWs folder and then After that, I'll add whatever effect I use. So I'll just call this tempo 1. And then we're going to export. Doesn't exist. Create it, yes. And then you can see over here, they're all getting exported. Click on these and see how they look. My image viewer is called IrfanView. I highly recommend it. We're going to need it for the next step anyways. Okay, now that everything is exported here, you could close it out. I choose just to leave Audacity open in case I want to do another effect. Now we're going to start converting these pictures. Go to File, Batch Conversion. Then we're going to go ahead and select the folder. In here, the field was already defaulted to my tutorial folder. But if you don't know where you currently are, you just go to Use Current Looking folder. And then you can just go ahead and type JPEG. And then we're going to go to Add All. Start batch. Okay. Now we're going to bring the sequence into DaVinci Resolve. Because we already used the IO saver, everything should have a number after it. If you don't have numbers after each picture, they might not import correctly. So now we're just going to drag and drop this into here. And I'll just put it on top of here in the timeline. And let it play.